Hey everyone, Wazoo here with a video on putting together a Java Spring Boot project along with a React.JS application right inside of it. Yeah. Now usually in these types of tutorials, when you try and Google packaging React.JS with Java Spring Boot, what you end up finding is a lot of tutorials where you build the server hosting on port 8080 and then a little separate side create React app project on port 3000. Now in this tutorial, what we're going to be doing differently is that I'm going to show you how to package everything together. That way you can throw it onto any kind of server and you've got the packaged React.js application serving right from your Java Spring Boot project. This is going to be really cool. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. As you can see, I've got a lot of steps set up on the screen in front of me, and let's go through them now. And I will try to get them timestamped correctly in the video down below. That way you can skip ahead to wherever you feel you are getting stuck. So first we're going to be creating the Java Spring Boot project with the help of start.spring.io, of course. Then we're going to be setting up the Create React App project along with the help of Node and NPM. Then, just to demonstrate that things are working and set up correctly in our environment, we're going to start the React app to be hosted on the default port of localhost 3000, and then the Java Spring Boot server we're going to start up with the default port of port 8080. Then we're going to be updating the pom.xml file within the Spring Boot server to add in a few plugins to help with the capabilities of building and packaging our JavaScript front-end package. Then we're going to be setting up a forward controller in the Java Spring Boot server. That way every request to the server will just forward automatically over to React. And then we're going to be updating our proxy setting within the React app package.json. And then finally profit. Yeah. Isn't that what it's all about? Well, sometimes anyway. Okay. This is pretty cool. Let's get started. So here we are at start.spring.io. I hope the text is big enough to be able to read it. So we're just going to be creating a Maven project. Of course, Java is the language we're using. I'm using versions of Spring Boot 2.6.7, but you can use whatever the latest version is. Maybe eventually 3.0 will be finally finished. So let's create a group of com.wazoo Inc. How about that? And then our artifact, we're just going to be calling it Spring Boot with React. Yes, that is a totally terrible package name, but whatever. It's descriptive at least. Okay. And we'll update the description to just be demo project for Spring Boot. Let's get that text bigger. Whoa, that's pretty big. Demo project for Spring Boot with React, but at least it's legible. Okay. We're going to be packaging it as a jar file that we can, a self-executing jar file. We'll be using Java 18. And for dependencies, we really don't need much right now, just to support things. We're going to go with DevTools and with Spring Web. And that is it right now. Just those two. Okay. And then let's generate this sucker. And then extract it to your favorite place on your hard drive, which I will do right now. As you can see, I've got the project open with Visual Studio Code, and I've got some Spring Boot extensions enabled, and maybe I'll put together another video that goes through that, and if I ever do, then this would be a good place to link it up here. It should show up there, wherever the YouTube puts the links. I'll put one up. I'll be sure to put one up there. Okay, so let's go ahead and get it started. And okay, everything kind of looks okay. Let's just double check. Let's pull up a. Okay, does that work? That works. Okay. So as you can see, we get our regular default Spring Boot starter page, which is the white label error page. Nice. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to be creating our Create React app. And for that, what we're going to do is we're going to stick it right inside the source main folder. So as you can see here, we've got our normal Java folder, which has all of our Spring Boot objects, our controllers, models, etc. And then our resources, which has our static, any static or templates, along with our application, any setting that we want to set up in our application properties file. So let's go in the main folder. I will be going into a terminal window right in here. Okay, right. So we are in, okay. I will move myself. Yoink. Okay. And then I'll type in cd source main. And then I will type in npx, create React app, and then we're just going to call our app front end. You can call it whatever you want. You can call it my app. You can call it React thing. I don't know. Let's just go with front end for now. Okay, and it'll set up to do its thing. It'll create a new React app right within the front end folder. So give it a few minutes and cut to me with this thing completed. But while it's going, how you doing, everyone? Hopefully you're having a good day wherever you are and enjoying the weather if the weather's nice, or staying inside if it's not so nice outside. As for me, I just did a whole bunch of sodding in our backyard. Ugh, so my arms are pretty tired, but that's alright. There's a big garden that my wife wants to put in. It'll be really cool when it's done, but we're kind of at the beginning stages of it right now. Okay, it looks like it's almost done. And still going. Alright. Okay, so now if we go into CD front end, and to start the local node React app, we just type in npm start. Okay, and it'll get started, and then I will just show you what it looks like on a new browser window. Okay, localhost 3000. I think by default when it starts up it tries to, okay, there we go. So now we've got on port 3000, let's make that a little bit bigger, but okay. So localhost 3000, we've got our JavaScript app. Okay, so now we've got the easy stuff all set up. We've got our Spring Boot server that's hosting on port 8080, and now we've got our Create React app that's being hosted on port 3000. So how do we put the two of them together? Ultimately, what I want is when I type in localhost 8080, is our Spring Boot server still running? I think it is. Then I want this to go to our Create React app application instead of showing this white label page. Okay, so let's stop our Control-C within that terminal window to stop our React app, and then let's stop our Spring Boot server. Okay, that should be stopped anytime. Okay. Also, just before we move on, what I will do is just show the version of NPM. I'm using 8.5.5, and the version of Node is 16.15.0. Okay, so now what we're going to do is, the next step in order for this thing to work correctly is we've got to update our pom.xml file with some Maven dependencies and tasks for building our Create React app within the Maven packaging task, which is what you run when you want to package together your Spring Boot application. So, okay, so we've got a dependency section and then a build section down here, which we want to update. So we want to add a new plugin. Okay, so let's go ahead and so many things always keep getting added. Okay. So what we're going to be adding is a Maven plugin called Frontend Maven Plugin. So let's go ahead and create a plugin here for the group ID. it's com.github.irslet. Hopefully I got that. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. Okay, so for an artifact ID, it is the front end Maven plugin. And for version, I'm just using the latest version, which I'll show you in a second, is 1.12.1. So how do you find that? If you go to the official Maven repository, oh, now we gotta increase that. So if you go to the official Maven repository and you search for the front-end Maven plugin, then you will see a lot of the list of all the historical artifacts for this plugin. And so the latest version is 1.12.1. Okay, so we've got that added here. And now let's add our executions stuff, which Maven will then execute automatically whenever we build anything. So let's create an executions folder, not folder, but a declaration, and then an individual execution. Okay, I didn't even spell executions correctly. Okay, executions. The dangers of talking while typing. Okay, there we go. Execution. Okay, now what we're going to do is we are going to add we need to install Node and npm as part of our build. So we need a goal, and let's add a goal of install Node and npm. And these steps are taken directly from the documentation of the front-end Maven plugin right on their website. Okay, so the goals. And so for Maven, we have to declare what phase we're doing this in, and this is in the generate resources phase. I wouldn't worry too much about Maven phases right now. Maybe I'll do a future video on what those different phases are and how to make use of them. But for now, we're just going to be taking advantage or hooking this up with the generate resources phase. Whoops, and let's add a configuration. And we are going to be using a Node version of 16.15.0. Again, use whatever Node version is in your system, or if it's something newer, depending when you watch this video. And as long as your Node and npm versions match. 8.5.5. Okay. And now we want to add another execution. So this is, let's put a comment here of just installing Node. And well, I know I'm saying the same thing as the ID, but maybe it makes it easier to follow when you come back to this later. Okay, so in this execution, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be running npm install. So running npm install, which will install all of the dependencies for React within our Java project. Okay, so ID is npm install. Let's see, goals, a goal of npm, and then the phase we want to hook into is again generate resources, and configuration, arguments, install. So this will run npm install, and everything will be groovy. Okay, finally, we need to run an npm build to build and package all of just to build the production version of our Create React app. So let's build our production version. And I'll show you where that is in 1 second. So let's do an ID of npm build. Okay. And then for our goals, we want a goal of npm again. Our phase is going to be generate resources. Okay, groovy. And our configurations, configuration, and arguments, run build. Okay. And then configurations. Oh, it's just configuration. Okay. Single. Oh, I think I've got an extra. Sorry about that. An extra configuration. Okay. That looks much better. And executions. And then we will have an extra configuration down here in Maven. Again, we want to declare the node version, and we are using 16.15.0. And our working directory, this is important. Okay, we are working within the source main front-end folder. So this would be whatever path to your React app that you, if you didn't use the front-end name, then whatever name you used when creating your React app. Okay, and now we have one more plugin to set up. And this will be copy our React build artifacts to Spring Boot. And this will copy everything that's created during that npm build to shove it into the rest of the Spring Boot where those Spring Boot artifacts are created. So for that, we're going to be needing to use a plugin called I'll get there. Okay, so org.maven, org apache.maven plugins, and then for artifact ID, let's go ahead and use the Maven Resources plugin, which is a pretty powerful little plugin. And let's set up some executions. Okay, so copy JavaScript app into Spring Boot. Okay, so phase, we're going to be using the process resources phase. And if I can find a link to it, there's a description of all the different phases. Maybe I'll put it in the description of this video down below. So goal, we want to copy resources. As I mentioned, we want to copy the build. Okay, so configuration, the output of the React app into where Spring Boot can look for it. Okay, so we want an output directory of target / classes / static. We're going to be putting that in the static folder. Okay, and resources. We're almost done, folks. Resource. And we are going to be declaring a directory of source main front end build. This is where we are pulling our React, our build, our completed React build, and filtering true. And that is it. All right. So let's go ahead and save that. And then if we go back into our command line, okay, and then we stay on in the root folder. Okay, and then we just type in and I'm on Windows, so nvnw and then package. So if we typed in everything correctly, then we are just going to see a bunch of green colored outputs along with just a bunch of log messages showing that things are working. So it'll package everything, it'll build everything, it'll run the tests in the server. Okay, build success, everything looked like it went through okay. So let's verify that. Let's go into, hopefully you can all see this. Okay, I'll make make the text a little bit bigger here. So let's go into source.main. Or no, sorry. Let's go into target. Okay, so we've got our jar file right there. And we've got our classes folder. So let's go into our classes and into static. And ta-da! We've got our index.html and our React app output right here. That's what it looks like. All right, this is really cool. Okay, so let's double test. Or not double test. So if we run it now, we do have the application hooked up, but we don't have the two still properly talking to each other. So nothing will change if we decide to run this on the command line right now and use port 8080. We're still going to see that default white label error page. So let's fix that. So what we need to do now is we need to set up a forwarding controller. So this is a special web controller on the Spring Boot side that basically what we're going to do is any request that comes into our Spring Boot app, we are just going to, it'll be processed by Spring Boot and then forwarded over to the React app application. So within the source main Java Spring Boot with React folder, apologies for the very long name, let's go ahead and create a new folder, and let's just call it controllers. And then let's create a new controller called ClientForwardController. Okay, so it is a class, oops, not public class, just a single class. And it is, we're going to use the controller annotation as you would. And then for any so this some fine tuning will be needed depending on what you serve from your Spring Boot server and what you want sort of exposed down the road. But for now, for the purposes of this project, just any request to your app is going to be forwarded over to the to the React application instead of being handled by anything on the Spring Boot side. So we're going to be using some regex here, which I had to Google and look for. So when you see me typing this in now, don't think that I'm just coming up with this out of memory. But basically, what we're doing here is we're parsing the path coming in on the browser. We're going to be looking at everything except for things that start with the dot. So if you want to create any special pages that will be handled by Spring Boot, then just make sure that you have them with the dot. But you know, this is totally optional. Maybe we just use ***. Okay, so let's. What am I missing here? Why do we have a red? Okay, maybe we're just not. We don't have things finished. Okay, so what we're going to do is create a method. We are going to be forwarding return forward to /, and that is it. That is the function. Okay, so we've got everything imported correctly. We've got that set up. Okay, looks good. So now what we're going to do is we are going to start things. Oh, and I think I owe an explanation. Well, first let's run this first. Okay, so we've got React app coming, and or not React, sorry, Spring Boot. So what happened? Okay. Oh yeah, okay. So when you try and start the Spring Boot server, because of the regex that we used right here, Spring Boot will give you an error that you need to use a different invalid mapping pattern detected. So either you need to use some different regex, or all we have to do is update a key in our application.properties file, which is what we're going to do right now. I don't want to find a different regex. So in our resources folder, remember there's our application properties, which is our main Spring Boot configuration setup. So we're going to go ahead and just cut and paste the key that it recommends you update. And then we are going to save this. Okay, let's try this again. I'm not sure why that still shows an error. Okay, seems to be working okay. Okay, so that we can see now that we've got our Spring Boot server up and running. Let's go back into, and let's refresh our port 8080. And ta-da! We see our Create React app. Okay, now I know this is really exciting. So what I wanted to show before is the NPM tasks. So just taking a little bit of a step back. If we go back into our React app, we have the, in our front end folder, we've got our package.json file. And if you're not really too familiar with JavaScript projects, the package.json file is sort of the core, it's kind of the equivalent of the pom.xml file that we have in our Java Spring Boot server. So the package.json manages all of the JavaScript dependencies that our project needs, as well as any scripts that we want to run, which is basically like tasks that we can run. So you'll recall in our pom.xml file, let's see if we can go back there. I'm going to stop the server for now, just so I can show you what I want to show you. If you recall, we've got several different tasks set up that we just copied in. So our npm run build is a script for, let's go right here. npm run build is a script for, is a shorthand for React scripts build, which will put together and package the React application. And then if we have the other task that we have set up in our pom.xml should be, npm install, which just installs all of the JavaScript dependencies. And I thought we had an, so an npm start is what I was running here within the terminal window. And that is, going back to our package.json file, that is just running React script start. And so all that's doing is running our local dev server. Okay, so now the one difference, so we've got our packaging included, and we've run our Spring Boot server, and we've hit it with port 8080, and it now comes up with our React app. Now, when we are going through port 8080, let's make sure, so just to prove things, let's run both here. Okay, so we've got things, we've got our Spring Boot server running. Let's go back to our terminal window, and let's run, okay, let's go back to the terminal. So in our terminal app, let's go back here, and let's run npm start. And this will run React script start, and it will just show our app on port 3000. So here's the difference. Right now the Spring Boot server version of this is only what we've built during that build phase step. So any live edits that we make won't show up on localhost 8080. So to prove that, let's go into our JavaScript app and into our front end folder. Okay, so let's open up source main front end source app.js, and let's just create a new p tag, and we'll just type in hello world. So if we save this, okay, we'll notice in the terminal that it's updated instantly. And let's go back to our browser here, and if we refresh it on port 8080, notice how we don't see any changes. But on our port 3000, we now see the updated hello world. So what this means is that when you're doing any local development and you're working mainly in the JavaScript, or if you want to do any JavaScript development, then the best way to do this is to make sure that we've got, or make sure you're testing on localhost 3000 while you're doing local development. And then to prove that things get bundled correctly, if we go back, if we stop the servers, and in our terminal, let's Control C. Okay, so then let's go back and we'll rebuild things. We'll run in the root folder mvnw package, and it will do everything. It'll run React scripts build, which I just saw right there. It'll create a optimized production build, and re-go through everything. And now we've run through all the tests on the Spring Boot side, and there, now we're done. So if we type in java.jar and then target, what did we call it? Spring Boot with React 0.01-snapshot.jar. If we run that, okay, everything is started up and it should be on port 8080 again. So let's go back to our port 8080 tab, and if we refresh it, now we see hello world. So we've proven that everything is bundled as we want it, but during local live development we're going to have to just use port 3000. Okay, this is really cool. Now there's one last step. So let's Control C, and let's also get everything into Git. Okay, I'll do that later. There's one last step. Okay, so the one last step is more for local development than it is for when we've got things packaged up. Sorry, just trying to think of how to say this. So now we've accomplished what we set out to accomplish. We've got our React app within our Spring Boot server packaging. We've also got it within our Spring Boot project, so we can go through and update our JavaScript, whatever we want to write in React app. Sorry, whatever we want to write in React, and then when we build and package the final jar file for our Spring Boot server, it will also include the output of anything that we've put into the front end project in React. So one thing that we want to do in the package, if we reopen the package.json, the one missing link that we're going to have, which we won't see today, but if you're playing around with this on your own and trying to use some API from the server, from the Spring Boot side, you're going to run into some issues. So what you're going to need is a proxy definition going to localhost 8080. So it wasn't easily demonstratable today in what we've set up, but once we start adding in an API layer within Spring Boot that we want to call from the React side, then this is going to be coming in super important, and this is the only way that things are going to work properly. So if you're finding that you followed all the steps in this video and you're having trouble communicating with the API in your backend, maybe this is the missing link, is updating the package.json with the proxy the proxy variable. Okay, and that's about it for this project. I had a lot of fun putting this together. If you liked what you saw, give the video a like, share it, subscribe to the channel. I'll be putting up more videos like this, and we'll see you next time. Have a great day, everyone. Peace.